So, hi there, I'm Marissa Bland in Career Development and Internships, and I'm excited to be here today with a couple of employers and a Jewel alum who are going to share their tips and insights related to making a great impression while doing internships. So today's topic is going to be all about making the most of your internship experience and setting yourself up for success so that it could potentially lead to a full-time job opportunity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to each of our representatives and they can share their name, position title, and the company that they work for.
Well, my name is Kaylin Baker. I am the campus recruiter for the Kansas City office of BKD, and I also recruit for Des Moines as well. And of course, we are a mid-market accounting firm located all over the country, but again, I sit in Kansas City and also work with the Des Moines office.
All right, thank you.
So my name is Alex Arend, and I'm with Marks Nelson. I'm the talent acquisition manager. So I do a lot of campus recruiting as well as some experienced hiring, but Marks Nelson is also a mid-sized firm. We are located just in Kansas City, and yeah, that covers it.
Great.
Hi, I'm James Milam. I'm from the class of 2015, so been removed from William Jewell for about 5 years now. I'm currently a government contractor at Deloitte, so I work in their government practice. And I work out of their Washington, D.C. office, technically Roslyn, Virginia. So I'm currently sitting in Alexandria, working from home like the rest of everyone else. So so happy to be here and excited to for the panel. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into questions. What are things that you all look for in interns that make them stand out, make them someone who you would want to hire on for full-time positions?
I can take this one. So one thing that I definitely look for is people that are going a little bit out of their way to get to know me and the company. I know it's really difficult sometimes to make those initial approaches and getting to know a recruiter or someone from a specific company. You do have to get out of your comfort zone to do that. But I think that people that are actually kind of making themselves take that step, that definitely is something that I notice and definitely helps me establish that relationship with them as they come back into the process a little bit later on.
Great.
I would add on to that and say even to just that willingness to learn when you're in that internship. I think that sometimes students have a hard time grasping the whole idea of that you're not supposed to know everything as you're coming in. And so we expect you to ask questions. We expect you to be taking notes. And so somebody who is open to gaining that feedback and asking those questions, I think makes somebody go really far. We don't need somebody coming in saying that they know exactly what they should be doing. And so somebody who's just open, I think, to that.
Great. Excellent.
Alex provided a wonderful segue for this last little tidbit here. So someone who's thankful for feedback is really looked at, right? So it takes time for people to look at your work products and for people to give you just basic feedback. And so just to show appreciation will provide an opportunity to gain more feedback, and that will increase your development over the course of the internship. So that's all I would add.
Okay, those are all great points. I know showing that appreciation will make those you work with feel that much more comfortable and confident working with you and sharing that feedback. So great. So looking at the opposite end of that question, what are things interns have done that make you not want to hire them on for full-time positions?
Well, I think one thing that, and this is going to be anywhere you go, is professional and promptness. You know, being on time, showing up on time, especially in the accounting world, especially in audit for sure, because they travel so much. If someone is waiting on you and you are about to catch a plane to a client, or you're about to drive to a client is expecting you, that can definitely not only look bad with the client, but you are going to be setting a pretty bad, like putting a bad taste in the rest of the team's mouth on something that could have been easily prevented. Now, granted, we all have those days where we just don't wake up in time, we forget our alarm clock, whatever, that happens. But when it becomes frequent, especially as an intern, probably not a good thing. So
I think professionalism too goes a long way. I think that your goal is to make as many connections as you can and build on those relationships, especially with your other interns that you're interning with. It's easy to kind of build those bonds with them very quickly. And we have a very family type atmosphere. So it's very easy to get very comfortable very fast. And I think sometimes as you are in the beginning of your career, there's that line of maybe too comfortable sometimes and sharing too much information. So I think just recognizing what a professional working relationship is and what that looks like in the workplace, especially in front of clients and things like that. We all want to talk about sports and we all want to talk about, what we did over the weekend, but sometimes you got to dial it back to your audience. And so just kind of being aware of who's in that audience at that time, I think.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. So both really great advice. I think you're going to be told to network a lot in your internships. I think you're going to have the opportunity to have a lot of what we call coffee chats at the organization that I'm currently working in. And so you have those coffee chats, and you're always welcome to set them up normally based on the company culture. But I would say one thing to not do is to come unprepared to meetings that you call. I think especially in the virtual world, if you're not on site, Zoom meetings need an agenda in order to accomplish something. Even if you're just trying to seek information about the organization, come prepared with questions, know what you're trying to get out of the meeting and the time that you're asking of someone else to spend with you.
Those are all excellent points. And yes, that finding that balance of being comfortable, but not too comfortable, I think is especially really helpful for students to know. So then what about how you look at your internship as a student? Some people say that you should think of your internship as a working interview. Would you agree with that advice?
absolutely.
Yep, for sure.
So I would agree as well. I would say try to always be collaborative and focus on teamwork and group work. I think a lot of times we focus on the work products that are being asked of us and the skills that we have, but oftentimes organizations are really looking at who you lean on in a team, how you collaborate with other people, and how you focus on D&I as well. Like, do you find people to work with that have cognitive diversity and think differently from yourself? So something to think about.
Okay, great. So what about the details in an internship? Do the small details matter? Something as simple as spelling correctly in emails that you send out. Is that important, and why or why not?
I watch for that even right now at the student level. If I'm receiving emails with typos, or especially resumes with typos, even sometimes formatting errors, that is something that I feel like is very important in helping us decipher, okay, how are you going to apply that to your client work? And when you're, in the nitty gritty of those smaller details, they're just as important as the big ones. And so are you going to be able to give that 110% and make sure that you're being accurate, even if sometimes those tasks can be very monotonous, especially in an internship. We try to make sure that you get a really, large exposure to a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, there is some of that kind of monotonous type of work that interns are just going to have to do. So making sure that you can stay focused in those tasks and paying attention to those details is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that one was really funny when I kind of read the questions before we joined. So for me personally, just being someone that I'm just not great with grammar and punctuation and spelling, and I get in a really big hurry, I don't look at that as much personally, but I can't guarantee our partners and our clients would feel the same way. Now, definitely a resume at that point, you should have had that reviewed several times. So that I can definitely notice, but with emails corresponding here and there, we all forget a comma. We all forget to capitalize that I. So I look past that a little bit more, but it's something that we definitely want to make sure that, again, me, even as a seasoned professional at this point, I am always trying to do a little bit better. I've downloaded Grammarly. So it's not something we want to make a habit, but if you accidentally send a wrong comma, or again, a non-capitalized, something once during your internship, don't beat yourself up over it. Those are very minimal things. But I would say definitely in the accounting world, something that a lot of students don't really realize until they're in the profession is how much those writing skills will come into play. So I would definitely suggest, and again, as a professional that's been out in the recruiting world for a while, definitely just brush up on your grammar, brush up on your punctuation, all of those things that we learned in like elementary school. They definitely come into play in this role more than you would think.
Yeah, I would just add on to both of those answers to say that it's always okay to ask for a peer review, to review something even as simple as an email, especially if it's going to a client. I know that, for example, I'm currently managing an analyst on the project that I have, who's right out of undergrad, probably around the ages of most of the people who might be watching this video. And I even send my emails down to him because he's actually better at grammar than I am. And so I recognize my weakness with grammar. And so, it's never be too proud to get that peer review before you send it out.
Mm-hmm. That is excellent advice. So how should an intern approach a situation when they're not sure how to do something? When should they ask questions? Should they ask questions? What is the best way to ask those questions?
So we actually have, all of our interns are paired with a buddy at BKD. And so that's someone that they are going to get to meet and have conversations with before they actually start. So you have someone to go to for questions. I feel like something is wrong when you're not asking questions. So ask. If you think it's stupid, it does not matter, and it's not going to be. Definitely still ask. There are no questions that you should not be asking. My biggest thing is, if you are taking someone's time to ask a question, make sure you are writing it down, and just keep that notebook with you everywhere. Take that notebook with you the entire duration of your internship and your first year or two, even as an associate. Ask the questions. People do not mind, not unless you're asking the same question over and over because you're not writing it down. But my thing is, ask the question when you have it. Definitely don't sit there and continue to spin your wheels, because that is actually more negative than just asking the question outright.
Great points.
Yeah, I definitely would second that. And I think another thing that I think gets overlooked too is maybe, as you are working through whatever it is that you're working on, whether it's tax return, whether it's, some sort of project, whichever, background you go into, also being, very conscious of the time that you're taking for that professional, especially as you're getting closer and closer to deadlines. That peer buddy also has their own deadlines that they're trying to meet. So even trying to maybe compile a list, so that way, when you say, okay, can we carve out 10 minutes? I've got some questions later, and you can just kind of, go down that list of questions. Obviously in the beginning, we expect a lot more questions than towards the end of your internship. Questions should be asked, though, throughout that process. So, and I think also really trying to make sure that you're applying those answers that you're receiving to that next project that you're working on, that next return or audit, whatever it is you're working on, and trying to find the similarities across the board instead of, I guess that comes back to what makes, an intern more successful than another is somebody who's able to kind of analyze that situation, take away the information that they received, and then apply it to the next one that they get, where maybe those details are still a little bit different, but the concepts are still the same.
Great.
Yeah, and just to loop it all together, I have sort of like a 3-step process. First, Google it if I don't know. The next one is ask sort of an internal colleague, which both answers have touched on. And then lastly, if it's task specific, definitely go back to your manager, because it's the worst thing in the world to get a product after 3 or 4 days that is completely, the opposite of what was asked. And so, yeah, just to reiterate that negative outlook that you might get if that's the case. So always ask those clarifying questions.
Excellent. I know some of the student staff members I've had who have impressed me the most are the ones who do seek out the answer themselves, or they propose a solution themselves, and they kind of outline, okay, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? And get feedback. And so it's just an approach to where they've done some of that legwork instead of just, you can't always do that because sometimes a student wouldn't even know how to begin to come up with a solution. But when you can, I think it does show kind of that next level thinking that you're trying to do this on your own, which can be really impressive. So what should an intern do when they're given an answer, or this could be expanded to when they're given feedback about their work? I know specifically applying to CPA work, from my understanding is that it often involves a really robust review process in which work is reviewed at multiple levels and feedback is given. And so what should an intern do with that feedback? I think, Alex, you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but if you have anything to expand on, or just, what should interns do with feedback or answers they're given?
Yeah, I think to add to it too is you're getting feedback maybe on the technical piece of it, but we're also trying to make sure our professionals are, training well-rounded interns so that you're successful no matter where you end up at. And so I think that even focusing on those soft skills and the feedback that's given there. And, from the very beginning, somebody who's open to that feedback, who's, very receptive to it and doesn't get defensive. I think sometimes it can be very hard to be told, where there might be errors or where there can be improvements. And sometimes we just have to go in with that of, they're here to help me. They want me to succeed, whether it's here or somewhere else. We all have the same end goal. So I think just keeping that at the forefront as you're receiving that information makes it a little bit easier to digest.
Great.
And definitely, again, just write it down. Write it down, write it all down. I tell every intern, keep this notebook that we're giving you with you everywhere you go. When you're in this office, when you're on a client site, write everything down. And then you'll be able to go back instead of asking the same question again. So once that's given to you, definitely make sure that you're writing it all down, and definitely agree with what Alex mentioned about, it's not personal. We all have the same goal. We just need to sometimes get there a little quicker than other different industries because accounting has such a strict guidelines. So
great.
Yeah, nothing to add. Just write it down. I mean, it's always easier to do than to have someone explain it more than once.
Right. Yeah, it's one thing to make a mistake once, but it's a whole nother thing to keep on making the same mistake over and over again. So great points. So have you noticed differences between the way that interns do grunt work or the way they respond to doing grunt work?
When I think of grunt work, so Marissa, just correct me, is that like getting coffee, running errands? Is that more like grunt work?
I mean, I guess it could be, but I know we're kind of in a day and age where that's obsolete in internship, or it used to be a lot more common practice. But I guess doing work that might be less than exciting, but it has to get done. So maybe it's a little bit tedious, but it's still meaningful work that needs to get done, or just, something that, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's still meaningful, but it may not be like their number one choice of what they would want to do in that moment.
Yeah. I'm thinking like off the top of my head, we have certain audits that happen in the summer that they're called employee benefit audits. And they're not as exciting. They're definitely ones that our staff, they're not stoked to be on it, but they're pretty simple. But I feel like in the past, our summer interns just are really excited to get the opportunity to do work for a client. So I've not really had too many complaints about that. I think everybody just wants to be there to get the experience that they are looking for. And so any work is better than having no work day. Sometimes we do have unassigned interns and then you end up just helping with recruiting or something for that day. But for the most part, I feel like everybody has done a really great job the past few years of just being really excited to touch clients and to be able to work so directly with them, because with BKD, you definitely do work with the client. You go to the client, you might meet the CFO your first week on an internship. So I think that has been the consistent for my previous interns, but definitely could be different in other firms and differently in other industries too.
It can definitely be different in different industries. We're kind of in the same boat as you, where, I think interns are just excited to have that interaction with the clients, or to even just be working on the client work, and getting that experience, that exposure, because it's already competitive enough to get the internship. So once they get there, I feel like they're just like, give me all the info. I want to hear it all. I want to touch it all, do it all. And so I don't think we have too many people that are, they may not tell me about it, because if they are working on just that really kind of monotonous, not fun data entry comparison kind of thing, we just try to say, you're using your analytical skills and putting that spin on it, because that's what everybody wants to do now. So that tedious work, I feel like, is kind of temporary, and it comes in waves. And so I think it helps almost probably break up the day of giving you a little bit of variety. So I don't think I've had really too many people speak negatively, at least, about it.
It's podcast time. That's another thing. Podcast. It's fine. Catch up on that podcast.
Yeah.
Well, that's great that they've had, and maybe they've been really, you all have done a really great job in that interviewing process too, to kind of weed out students who might, if they did get it, get the internship, then maybe they wouldn't respond so positively to that work. So that's great. James, what about, have you had any insights in this area?
Yeah. Someone mentioned data capture. That is something that definitely comes to mind. It's always needed to be done, because you can really show impact to the client when you're capturing data and able to compile it. But I would just say, when it comes to grunt work, always try to find a purpose in a task. So a good leader will show you or tell you the purpose. But if you've discovered sort of your why, like why you're there, why do you want to be there, then you'll be able to find purpose in some of the most monotonous tasks.
Great. All right. So what should an intern do if he or she doesn't think they can meet a deadline?
Communicate.
Yeah, I was going to say, just go if you're in charge.
Yeah, you just have to have that open communication with your supervisor. If you maybe are still learning, the best way to approach your supervisors, because you may have numerous ones, that's when you go back to that peer buddy and say, hey, I'm a little nervous here. This is what I've got on my plate. 1, can you maybe help me prioritize what I need to be working on? But 2, how can I talk to, the in charge on this? So I think you build those relationships very early on, like I said, with the other interns as well as your peer buddy. And so you've got people that you can kind of, pick their brains. If you don't feel comfortable just, directly going to that supervisor. Hopefully, we've got open door policy, and we like to think we're pretty friendly people, so it shouldn't be too scary. But I think it's those initial nerves when you come into an internship. You don't know who you can approach and who you can't, and if you're questioning it, just go to that peer buddy. But otherwise, people should be pretty open to these questions, and we would rather you communicate if you're going to have an issue earlier on than right there at the deadline. So.
Yeah, I think when you're juggling multiple tasks, oftentimes you'll know at the time that it's being assigned whether you're able to prioritize that task and get it and meet a deadline. And so what I would say here is manage the expectations at the time that it's assigned. So if you have things on your plate and a 4th thing is being added and they want it tomorrow, make sure that they know the other 3 things will be delayed in order to get that new thing assigned to them. And make sure your manager is okay and understands your line of thought and how you're prioritizing your own tasks. And if there's a difference or a change that needs to be made, the manager will either give the task to someone else who can provide the deadline, which is okay, or they'll reprioritize your task accordingly. So that's that.
All right. So what advice do you have regarding, well, I guess I should ask, Kaylin, did you have anything to add to that one?
No, they covered it really well.
Okay. What advice do you have regarding managing the stress of an internship? since students, if they're doing internships or when they're doing internships, they're also sometimes taking classes, or maybe they're involved in Greek life or a student athlete. And so what advice do you have regarding managing that stress?
Well, my number one thing that it kind of goes along with this. I know that as a student, you've got your internship, you do have Greek life, you have work, possibly school. I mean, you've got so much going on. I would say though, if you are getting a full-time internship that could possibly lead to the beginning of your career, definitely make that a top priority. Obviously, you have to pay your bills, you have to go to work, but this is something you've beat out so many people to get this role. So I would definitely make sure to make that a priority, because that's something that I definitely have seen a lot of students struggle with. So that would be my number one piece of advice there. But when it comes to the stress, I mean, yes, I mean, this might be the first time you've ever worked 40 plus hours a week. And so again, you still have work and friends. And I definitely would make sure to set aside time, have a schedule, whatever that looks like, whether it's your phone or you're actually buying a planner to write things down. With accounting, you might be staying a lot later one day and you didn't expect it, but definitely making sure that you're carving out time to see friends, see family, work out, go for a walk, and just enjoying a few things for yourself here or there. That's going to be the biggest thing. And then also taking short breaks in the day when it's a good time, taking a walk around the building even. There's a lot of things that you can do to just kind of take yourself out of the moment, whether it be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and that can definitely help just reset any stress that you may be feeling.
Great.
Nailed it.
Either of you have anything to add? You did a great job.
I don't. Those are good pieces of advice.
Thanks.
Nothing to add. Yeah, great word.
Okay, so I have one more question before I'll just open it up if you all have any additional advice. But is it important for an intern to attend after work events that they might be invited to? I don't know if that applies to what you've seen or experiences within your organizations, but I'll throw it out there.
Well, it definitely doesn't apply right now, unfortunately. I would say yes. I think it's definitely important. You don't have to make everyone. And again, I know they're kind of awkward when you don't know anybody. It's definitely getting out of your comfort zone. But I know at BKD, our culture is such a huge piece of who we are. That doesn't mean, again, that you're not going to get hired because you're not social. That's definitely not a piece by any means. But I think that that's a huge piece of you really enjoying coming to work every day. You get to really become pretty close with the people that you work with, and you share in the same happy and you share in the same frustrating long days. And I think that definitely does start when there are things going on outside of work. We do happy hours all the time. We're located right downtown Kansas City. So there's always somebody walking across the street to do a happy hour, grab a beer. Partners come, first year associates, interns. I mean, I think it's a really great way to network as well. So I would absolutely think that it's a very good thing and that you should go. You don't have to go every time. I don't even drink. But I go to the happy hours just to get to know people and get to know them on a different level than just that high in the office. So I think that also, again, just helps our culture when everybody knows each other in like that family atmosphere, like Alex had mentioned earlier. And you can't really get that, during that work day all the time.
I agree. And there's different events. I mean, well, when you're in the office, there's different events going on too, or even the offices are, especially during busy season, you've got so many meals being brought in. And a lot of people want to just run it back to their desk, but we try to encourage people to sit down, hang out, talk, mingle with your coworkers, especially people that maybe you don't work with on a day-to-day basis. You have those opportunities to do so. Obviously, in our virtual world right now, it looks a little bit different, but we still do, those lunch kind of, I want to call it a happy hour, but it's not. But we do little lunches together. We utilize the breakout rooms in Zoom so that we can, sit and eat and hang out, or, even during our staff meetings, they're all virtual now. And so being able to have those breakout sessions. So staff meetings are not, those are mandatory, but at the same time, you have those opportunities to get to know your coworkers outside of just the tax return or project or whatever it is you're working on. So I think you definitely need to make that effort to network. And like Kaylin said, it doesn't mean that it has to do with you getting hired or not getting hired, but I think that as you build those relationships and as maybe special projects come about, somebody will be like, hey, I was just talking to Kaylin the other day. She said she may have some availability. She's interested in real estate. I have this real estate project. So it's because of those conversations that you're having outside of just the day-to-day tasks that you're working on, where they're able to get to know you, your interests, and just you as a person. But it just helps keep you top of mind as well for different opportunities that might come across. So I think the more you can get involved and get out there, especially, I mean, an internship is only a small period of time. So utilize that time that you have there as much as possible.
Excellent.
Yeah, the only thing I have to add is just that if you're, if you know people on a relational level, they're much more likely to help you when you come to them for help or ask for help. So by knowing a person's name of their pet, right, that's a connection that you can make with someone, and you can ask them on the fly as you need something from them. Hey, how's Daisy doing? And you can really kind of connect with them on that level, and they're much more cheerful and more likely to kind of lend a helping hand, and they may even offer you some unsolicited advice or feedback. So that's always a good opportunity as well. So yeah, definitely as an intern, got to make those events, either virtual or in person. Got to be there.
Great. All right. So any last pieces of advice, words of wisdom, anything you'd like to share? And, especially as you're thinking about, oh, this is a problem maybe you've had. I know it sounds like you all have worked with really great interns, but when you think about the ones that maybe weren't as great, if there's anything that stands out that you didn't get to share earlier, anything else you want to add?
I mean, I feel like I covered, I feel like industry wide, and really any kind of internship, your main thing is usually going to be they're not participating in all the social stuff. Maybe they're not prompt or professional, and they're not putting the internship as their first. And those are going to be, and I don't know if you guys, James and Alex, if you feel like those are usually my top three consistent that we see that are kind of things that we need to coach on, but those are definitely things that we have already covered, which is great. But do you guys have any other ones other than those three?
I feel like that's the biggest piece of it, and as you're getting that feedback, making sure that you're utilizing it moving forward too.
That's
and
true.
Asking those same questions or making those same errors over and over. I think that's a big piece of it, is somebody receptive to feedback and absorbing that information and utilizing it moving forward. I think that's a big piece too.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw a different spin on this. So I think my piece of advice is just, you have a passion, you have a path, but be flexible in that. So even if you're really good at something, it may not be the type of work that energizes you. Maybe you're really good at Excel, but you really get stressed out when you have to do Excel all day. So think of your strengths as something that energizes you and doesn't stress you out. And then you can sort of navigate your professional career around that. And so really just take the opportunity to discover, have a path, but be flexible.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording, but I really appreciate your time today.